Ben Walker wiped down the same steel counter for the third time that afternoon, watching the lunch rush finally thin out. His little community kitchen in New Seattle's immigrant district wasn't much to look at, just 20 mismatched tables, a serving line, and walls that had seen better days. But it was his, and for the past 7 years, it had been feeding anyone who walked through those doors, no questions asked. The afternoon heat made the kitchen feel like an oven, but Ben didn't mind. He was already prepping vegetables for dinner service when he heard the bell above the door chime. 3 small figures shuffled inside, and Ben looked up from his cutting board. They were kids. Alien kids, but kids nonetheless. The tallest one barely reached his waist. Their exoskeletons had a dull, grayish tint that Ben somehow knew wasn't right. Their clothes were nothing more than torn sheets wrapped around their small frames. But what got him were their eyes, large, multifaceted, and filled with a hunger that went beyond just needing food. "Hello there," Ben said softly, setting down his knife. He'd seen plenty of alien refugees come through his doors, but never children this young on their own. The tallest one stepped forward, antennae twitching nervously. "Food!" The word came out awkward, like they'd practiced it but weren't quite sure how human mouths shaped the sound. "Yeah, buddy, we've got food." Ben grabbed 3 trays and started loading them up. Rice, steamed vegetables, some protein that most species could digest. He'd learned over the years what worked and what didn't. "Come on, sit down." The 3 children scurried to the nearest table, their movements quick and insect-like. Ben brought over the trays and watched as they stared at the food like they couldn't quite believe it was real. "Go ahead," he encouraged. "It's okay." They ate slowly at first, then faster, their small mandibles working efficiently. Ben noticed they had perfect table manners despite their obvious hunger. They didn't make a mess, didn't fight over the food, and the oldest one made sure the smallest got enough before taking more themselves. Over the next 2 weeks, they came back every single day. Always at the same time, always quiet and polite. Ben started recognizing them, started setting aside portions before they even arrived. He learned they were Vextai, though most of what he knew about the species came from news reports about trade agreements and diplomatic nonsense way above his pay grade. "You got names?" he asked one afternoon, sitting down across from them. The oldest one looked up. "Tico," they said, pointing to themselves. Then to the others. "Myra. Pip." "Ben," he replied, tapping his chest. "Nice to meet you all officially." Pip, the smallest, made a chittering sound that might have been a laugh. It was the first time Ben had seen any of them show emotion beyond hunger and caution. He started noticing other things, too. The way Tico always checked the doors before they ate, like they were expecting trouble. How Myra kept her younger sibling close at all times. The fact that they never talk about parents or guardians or where they were staying. Ben had been around enough hard luck cases to know when to push and when to let things be. These kids were scared of something, and the last thing they needed was an adult demanding answers. Instead, he did what he did best. He fed them. He researched Vextai dietary needs, discovered they couldn't process certain proteins but did well with fungi and root vegetables. He started incorporating more of those into his daily menu, not just for them but for other Vextai who occasionally stopped by. He learned a few words in their language. "Hello, thank you, are you okay?" The kids noticed. Of course they noticed. One evening, as Ben was closing up, Tico approached him with something clutched in their small appendages. It was a smooth stone, polished to a shine, with intricate patterns carved into it. "For you," Tico said carefully. "Thank you for kindness." Ben felt something catch in his throat. He took the stone, feeling its weight. "You don't have to thank me, kid. You just keep coming back. All right? You and your siblings." Tico's antennae twitched in what Ben was learning meant agreement or happiness. "We come back. Every day." And they did. Rain or shine, every single afternoon, 3 small alien children showed up at Ben Walker's soup kitchen. And every single afternoon, he made sure they left with full bellies and whatever dignity he could offer them in a world that clearly hadn't been very kind. He didn't know their story yet. Didn't know where they slept or why they were alone. But he knew they needed help, and that was enough. 3 months had passed since the kids first walked through his doors, and Ben still couldn't shake the nagging worry that kept him up at night. Where were they sleeping? who was looking after them when they weren't at his kitchen. He got his answer on a cold Tuesday evening. Ben had stayed late to fix a broken freezer, and as he hauled trash to the dumpster out back, he heard voices, small voices, speaking in that clicking, musical language he'd come to recognize. He followed the sound down the alley to an old warehouse that had been condemned for at least 5 years. Through a gap in the boarded-up windows, he saw them. Tico, Myra, and Pip huddled together on a pile of old blankets, sharing what looked like half a protein bar between them. The warehouse had no heat, no running water, nothing that even resembled a home. Ben felt his chest tighten. These were babies, just kids who should have been tucked into warm beds, not surviving in an abandoned building like stray animals. He didn't confront them that night. Instead, he went home and lay awake until sunrise, making a plan. The next afternoon, when the kids showed up for lunch, Ben had a proposition ready. "Hey, Tico," he said, crouching down to their level. "How would you three feel about helping me out around here? Nothing too hard. Just cleaning tables, organizing supplies, stuff like that. I can't pay much, but you get 3 meals a day instead of 1, and it's warm in here." Tico's antennae shot straight up. "Help? We can help." "Yeah, buddy, if you want to." The way their eyes lit up made Ben's decision feel right. That evening, after the dinner rush ended, the 3 kids stayed behind. Ben showed them how to wipe down tables, how to stack chairs, where the cleaning supplies were kept. They worked with an eagerness that broke his heart. Nobody should be this grateful for basic kindness. Lisa, one of his regular volunteers, pulled him aside. "Ben, honey, what are you doing? Those kids need child services, not a job." "Child services will throw them in a processing center," Ben replied quietly. "You know how backed up the system is. They'll be separated, processed, probably deported to some facility off-world. At least here, they're together. They're safe." Lisa studied his face for a long moment, then sighed. "You've got a good heart. Probably gonna get you in trouble one day." "Probably," Ben agreed. As weeks turned into months, the transformation in the kids was remarkable. Pip started chitting more often. What Ben now understood was laughter. Myra began humming while she worked, a sound like wind chimes in a breeze. Tico started asking questions about everything: how the stove worked, why humans needed so much water, what all the different spices were for. Ben found himself looking forward to their presence. The kitchen felt more alive with the minute. He taught Tico how to dice vegetables, showed Myra the proper way to set tables, let Pip organize the dry goods storage because the kid had a mind for patterns that honestly amaze him. Other regulars noticed too. Old Jerry, who came in every day for lunch, started bringing picture books to help the kids learn English. Rita, who ran the corner store, donated 3 winter coats when the weather turned cold. The community was embracing these kids the same way Ben had, no questions asked. One night, after everyone else had left, Tico approached Ben while he was doing inventory. "Ben," they said softly, "why you help us?" It was the most complex English sentence Tico had managed, and Ben could hear the genuine confusion behind it. He set down his clipboard and thought about how to answer. "Because you needed help, kid. That's all the reason anybody should need. But we are nothing. Just Vextai children. No family here. No important." Ben felt something fierce rise in his chest. He knelt down so he was eye level with Tico. "Now you listen to me. You are not nothing. You hear me? You and your siblings. You're smart, kind, hard-working kids. And yeah, maybe you don't have family here in the traditional sense, but you've got this place. You've got me." Tico's antennae drooped in what Ben had learned meant they were feeling emotional. "You are like parent." "Yeah," Ben said, his voice rough. "Yeah, I guess I am." That night, for the first time, the kids didn't leave after closing. Ben had set up 3 cots in his office, with real blankets and pillows. It wasn't much, but it was better than that freezing warehouse. "Just until I figure something better out," he told them, though they all knew he was lying. This was it. This was better. A makeshift family held together by kindness and stubbornness and the simple belief that everyone deserved a safe place to sleep. Ben didn't know anything about Vextai culture beyond what he'd cobbled together from library downloads and database searches. He didn't know why 3 alien children were alone on Earth. He didn't know if he was doing the right thing by keeping them off the official radar. But he knew they were eating 3 meals a day now. He knew they were learning and growing and laughing. He knew that when Pip had nightmares, Myra would hum that wind chime song until their sibling calmed down. He knew that Tico was teaching themselves to read English using old recipe books. And for now, that was enough. Somewhere in the upper levels of the Galactic Council headquarters, a very different kind of meeting was taking place. Empress Shavara stood before a holographic display of Earth, her compound eyes scanning thousands of data points while the Security Council waited in tense silence. 6 months. Her children had been missing for 6 months. The official story was that the royal heirs were in seclusion for educational purposes. The truth was that during a routine diplomatic visit to Earth, Tico, Myra, and Pip had vanished without a trace from their secure quarters. No demands had been made. No bodies had been found. They had simply disappeared. Shavara had mobilized every intelligence asset at her disposal, but quietly. The Vextai Empire controlled 200 worlds and commanded the most powerful fleet in known space. If word got out that the royal heirs were missing, vulnerable, it would trigger chaos. Rivals would see weakness. Enemies would strike. The careful peace she'd maintained for decades would crumble. So she searched in secret, turning over every lead, following every whisper, while maintaining the facade that everything was perfectly normal. Meanwhile, back in New Seattle, Ben was facing a crisis of his own. The immigration enforcement officer stood in his kitchen, datapad in hand, looking thoroughly unsympathetic. Her name was Janet Rodriguez, and she'd been doing this job long enough to have seen every trick in the book. Mr. Walker, I'm going to ask you one more time. Where are the 3 Vextai miners that were reported as frequenting this establishment? Ben kept his voice steady, his hands busy wiping down the counter even though it was already clean. I run a soup kitchen, Officer Rodriguez. Lots of people come through here. I don't keep attendance records. Witnesses say you've been housing undocumented alien children on the premises. That's a violation of about 15 different regulations. The kids help out sometimes, Ben said carefully, in exchange for meals. That's not illegal. Janet's expression softened slightly. Look, I get it. You're trying to help. But these children need to be in the system. They need proper documentation, medical care, education. What you're doing, however well-intentioned, isn't sustainable. The system will separate them, Ben said quietly. They'll be processed, probably sent to different facilities. They've already lost everything. I'm not taking away the only family they have left. That's not your decision to make. Then whose decision is it? Yours? Some bureaucrat who's never even met them. Janet closed her datapad with a sigh. I'm giving you 72 hours to bring them involuntarily. After that, I'll be back with warrant and social services. I'm sorry, Mr. Walker. I really am. After she left, Ben stood alone in his kitchen, feeling the walls closing in. He'd known this day might come, but knowing didn't make it any easier. That evening, he sat the kids down and tried to explain what was happening. Tico listened carefully, translating the complex parts for their siblings. They want to take us away. Pip asked, their voice small and frightened. They want to put you somewhere official, Ben said. Somewhere with records and rules and people who are supposed to know how to take care of kids better than a soup kitchen owner. But we want to stay with you, Myra said. Ben felt something crack inside his chest. I know, sweetheart. I want that too. The next 2 days were a blur. Ben contacted every lawyer he could find who did pro bono immigration work. He filed emergency guardianship papers. He drained his savings account to pay processing fees and legal costs. He called in every favor he'd accumulated over 7 years of running the kitchen. His friend Danny, who worked in city records, pulled him aside. Ben, man, you need to understand something. The Vextai government has strict protocols about their citizens, especially children. If these kids are registered anywhere, taking custody is going to be nearly impossible. They're not registered anywhere, Ben said. That's the whole problem. It's like they don't exist. Danny frowned. That's weird. The Vextai are meticulous about documentation. Every citizen is logged from birth. How did 3 kids just fall through the cracks? It was a good question, one Ben didn't have an answer for. What he didn't know was that his guardianship application had triggered something in the Galactic database. A facial recognition scan, routine for all legal proceedings involving aliens, had pinged against a list that very few people had access to. A list of 3 missing royal heirs. On the other side of the galaxy, an alert landed on Empress Shivara's private console. Her chief of intelligence appeared moments later. "Your Majesty, we found them." The Empress felt relief and rage flood through her in equal measure. "Where?" "Earth. New Seattle. They've been there the entire time, living in it appears to be a charity food establishment run by a human named Ben Walker. Condition: alive, healthy, according to the scans. The human file for emergency guardianship. That's what triggered the match." Shivara stood, her presence filling the room. "Prepare my ship. Minimal security detail. I want discretion." "Your Majesty, we could simply extract them." "No." Her voice was absolute. "My children have been missing for 6 months, and this human somehow kept them alive and cared for enough that is fighting the legal system to keep them. I need to understand what happened before I make any decisions." The Empress was many things: a warrior, a politician, a ruler of worlds. But before all of that, she was a mother, and she needed to see with her own eyes what kind of person had been caring for her children while the most powerful empire in the galaxy searched in vain. Back in New Seattle, Ben had no idea that his small act of filing paperwork had just set in motion events that would change his life forever. He was too busy trying to figure out how to protect 3 kids who had somehow become his entire world. He had 7 to 2 hours to find a solution. 7 to 2 hours before everything fell apart. Time was running out. The ship landed in the dead of night, silent and invisible to human detection systems. Empress Shivara had chosen a small personal craft with only 6 guards, all dressed in civilian clothing. This wasn't a military operation. This was a mother looking for her children. She'd spent the entire journey reviewing surveillance footage of Ben's soup kitchen, watching grainy images of her children laughing, working, living like normal kids instead of heirs to an empire. It confused her. It angered her. And somewhere deep down, it gave her a feeling she couldn't quite name. The next morning, Ben was in the kitchen early, teaching Tico how to make bread dough. It was day 3 of his 7 to 2 hour deadline, and he still hadn't found a legal solution. But he'd be damned if he'd spend his last morning with the kids worrying instead of teaching them something useful. "You've got to knead it like this," he demonstrated, pushing the dough with the heel of his hand. "It's all about patience. Can't rush good bread." Tico mimicked his movements, their smaller appendages working the dough carefully. "Patience," they repeated. "Like you have with us." Ben smiled. "Yeah, buddy, exactly like that." The bell above the door chimed. Ben glanced up, expecting to see Jerry coming in for his usual early coffee. Instead, a Vextai woman stood in the doorway, flanked by 2 others. She was tall, her exoskeleton gleaming with an iridescent quality Ben had never seen before. She wore robes that seemed to shimmer with their own light, and there was something about the way she held herself that made Ben's instinct scream that this was someone important. Very important. Tico's hands froze in the dough. "Mother." The word came out barely above a whisper. Ben's world tilted sideways. "Mother?" The woman's eyes locked onto the 3 children, and Ben saw something crack in her composure. "My children," she said, her voice thick with emotion. Then she switched to rapid Vextai, words flowing too fast for Ben to catch even a few phrases he'd learned. Tico responded, their voice small and guilty. Myra had appeared from the storage room, frozen in place. Pip peeked out from behind the prep table, antennae drooping. Ben stood there, dough still on his hands, trying to process what was happening. This woman was their mother who was clearly wealthy, clearly powerful, clearly everything Ben had assumed didn't exist, because why else would 3 kids be living in an abandoned warehouse? The Empress finally turned her attention to Ben. She studied him for a long moment, this human covered in flour with worn clothes and tired eyes. "You are Ben Walker," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yes," Ben replied, because his mother had raised him to be polite even when his world was falling apart. "You have been caring for my children." "I didn't know they were your children. They were hungry. They needed help." One of the guards whispered something to the Empress. She held up a hand for silence, still watching Ben. "Show me what you do here." Ben blinked. "I'm sorry. My intelligence reports tell me facts. Numbers. I want to see with my own eyes what my children's life has been for 6 months." So Ben did. He showed her how Tico had learned to prepare vegetables, how Myra could set up the entire dining area in under 15 minutes, how Pip had organized their storage system in a way that actually made more sense than what Ben had been using for years. He showed her the cots in his office, the books they'd been reading, the drawings Pip had made that were stuck to the walls. The Empress watched everything in silence. She saw her children move with confidence and purpose. She saw them laugh when Ben made a joke. She saw the way they looked at him, with trust, with affection, with something that looked a lot like love. Finally, during the lunch rush, she sat in the corner and observed. Ben served meals to anyone who came through the door. A homeless veteran, a refugee family, 2 college students who were clearly stretching their budget. He treated everyone with the same dignity and kindness, never asking questions, never judging. And her children worked alongside him like they'd been born to it. When the rush ended, the Empress finally spoke again. "Tico, come here." Her eldest child approached nervously. The Empress knelt down, something she hadn't done since they were toddlers. "Tell me the truth. Why did you run away?" Tico's antennae trembled. Because at the palace, there were always guards, always teachers, always people trying to hurt us to hurt you. We weren't children. We were targets, assets. We wanted to know what being normal felt like. Just once. "And you found that here? In this place?" "We found Ben." Pip piped up. "He didn't know who we were. He just cared, because we needed caring." The Empress looked at Ben. "You filed for legal guardianship." "Yes." Immigration was going to separate them, send them to processing facilities. I couldn't let that happen. You used your life savings to pay legal fees." Ben shifted uncomfortably. "How did you?" "I am Emperor Shivara, ruler of the Vextai Empire and 200 allied worlds, commander of the largest fleet in this sector of the galaxy. There is very little I don't know." She paused. "What I don't understand is why. You gained nothing from helping my children. You risked legal consequences. You depleted your resources. Why?" Ben looked at the 3 kids, at their hopeful faces and nervous antennae. Because they are just kids. They deserved better than sleeping in a freezing warehouse and scrounging for food. And yeah, maybe I couldn't give them much, but I could give them safety, warmth, a place where they mattered. They are heirs to an empire. "They are children first," Ben said firmly. "Everything else is just titles." The Empress stood silent for what felt like an eternity. Her guards looked tense, waiting for orders. The children held their breath. Finally, she spoke. "You truly had no idea who they were." "Not until you walked through that door 5 minutes ago." Something that might have been a smile crossed her face. The galaxy has forgotten what that looks like. Kindness with no agenda. Help with no expectation of reward. She looked at her children. "You are right, Ben Walker. They are children first." Ben felt his heart hammering. "Are you taking them away?" The Empress met his eyes. "That depends. We need to talk about what happens next." The soup kitchen had never been this quiet during operating hours. Ben had closed early, something he'd never done in 7 years, and now sat across from an Empress at one of his worn tables. The children sat together on a bench nearby, watching with worried eyes. Shivara had dismissed a guard to wait outside. This conversation, she decided, needed to happen without an audience. "My children are the future of the Vextai Empire," she began. "From the moment they hatched, their lives have belonged to our people. They have duties, responsibilities, a destiny that was written before they could even speak." Ben nodded slowly, his stomach churning. He knew where this was going. "But," the Empress continued, her voice softer now, "they are also my children. And for 6 months, I thought they were dead. I thought I had failed in the most fundamental way a mother can fail, to keep them safe." "You didn't fail," Ben said quietly. "They are alive. They are healthy. They are right here." Because of you. Shivara looked at him with those multifaceted eyes that seemed to see everything. A human soup kitchen owner who asked for nothing, expected nothing, and gave them everything they needed anyway. Ben glanced at the kids. Pip was holding Myra's hand. Tico looked like they might cry. I gave them what any kid deserves. That's not special. That's just basic decency. You will be surprised how rare basic decency is when thrones and empires are involved. The Empress folded her hands on the table. I have a choice to make. Ben Walker. I can take my children back to the homeworld, surround them with guards and tutors and all the security an empire can provide. They will be safe. They will be prepared for their future. They will never want for anything material. But, Ben prompted, hearing the hesitation in her voice, but they will never have this again. She gestured around the kitchen. They will never have a place where they are just children, where someone cares for them not because of their bloodline, but because they needed help. She paused. They ran away because palace life was suffocating them. If I take them back to the same environment, I will lose them again, perhaps permanently, next time. Ben's heart was racing. What are you saying? I am saying that I have ruled worlds, commanded fleets, negotiated treaties that shaped the destiny of billions. But I don't know how to give my children childhood. She looked directly at him. You do. The words hung in the air between them. Tico suddenly stood up. Mother, please. We don't want to leave Ben. We don't want to leave Earth. Tico, the Emperor started. No, let me speak. Tico's voice was stronger than Ben had ever heard it. You are a great Empress. The greatest our people have ever known. But you're always busy. Always dealing with councils and threats and politics. We had 100 caretakers at the palace, but none of them cared about us. They cared about keeping the heirs alive. Ben cares about us. About Tico and Myra and Pip. Not about what we represent. Myra stood too. He taught me that it's okay to be afraid sometimes. That being strong doesn't mean never showing weakness. He lets me organize things my way, Pip added, even when his way was faster. Because he said my way was clever, and I should be proud of being clever. Ben felt his eyes burning. He hadn't realized how much these small moments had meant to them. The Empress looked at her children, really looked at them, and saw something she'd been too busy to notice before. They'd grown, not just physically, but in ways that mattered more. They stood straighter, spoke with confidence, had opinions, and wasn't afraid to voice them. 6 months with a human who made soup had done what a palace full of the Empire's best educators couldn't. Ben Walker, Shivara said formally, I want to make you an offer. I will establish a permanent embassy here in New Seattle. My children will split their time, 6 months here on Earth with you, learning to be children and to understand what it means to lead with compassion. 6 months on the homeworld, learning the politics and responsibilities of their birthright. Ben's mouth fell open. You, what? I'm declaring you an honorary member of the Vextai Royal House, guardian and mentor to the Imperial heirs. You will have resources, protection, and full authority to raise my children as you see fit during their time on Earth. I run a soup kitchen, Ben said, still trying to process. I don't know anything about raising alien royalty. You know how to raise children who are kind, who work hard, who understand that everyone deserves dignity regardless of their station. The Emperor stood. That is exactly what future rulers need to learn. The politics and strategy, I can teach them. But compassion without agenda, that is something they can only learn from you. Ben looked at the 3 kids, at their hopeful faces. Is this what you want? All 3 nodded enthusiastically. Then yeah, Ben said, his voice rough with emotion. Yeah, we can make that work. Pip launched themselves at him, wrapping their small arms around his waist. Myra and Tico quickly followed. Ben held all 3 of them, this strange little family that had found each other by accident and stayed together through stubbornness and love. The Empress watched the scene, and for the first time in 6 months, felt peace. Her children were safe. More than safe, they were happy. Within a week, things changed rapidly. The abandoned building where the kids had been sleeping was demolished and replaced with a gleaming embassy structure. But right next door, Ben's soup kitchen remained, expanded and upgraded, but still fundamentally the same place. The Galactic Council was baffled. The Vextai noble houses were scandalized. But Empress Shavara had spoken, and her word was law. Ben's little kitchen became known across the galaxy, not because of politics or power, but because of what it represented. A human who'd seen 3 hungry kids and decided that was reason enough to help. No ulterior motives. No grand plans. Just simple human compassion. Journalists came from across known space to interview the soup kitchen owner who'd accidentally become guardian to Imperial A's. Ben hated the attention, but he tolerated it because the Empress had done something brilliant. She'd ensured his kitchen received enough funding to expand operations tenfold. Now they could feed hundreds instead of dozens. They could offer job training. They could help more people, more families, more lost souls who just needed someone to care. On quiet evenings, after the rush was over and the kids were doing homework at a corner table, Ben sometimes still couldn't believe his life. He'd wake up thinking it was all a dream, that he'd walk into his kitchen and find it was just him again, alone with his soup pots and his worn tables. But then Tico would ask for help with their math homework, or Myra would show him a new dish he'd invented, or Pip would reorganize his pantry in some new elaborate system, and he'd remember. This was real. This strange, impossible, wonderful reality was his life now. The Empress visited monthly, and they'd grown into an odd kind of friendship. She'd sit in his kitchen, drink terrible coffee, and they'd talk about the kids like any divorced parents might, comparing notes, sharing concerns, celebrating victories. "They are happy," she said during one visit. "Truly happy. I see it every time I come." "Yeah," Ben agreed, watching Pip teach another refugee kid how to fold napkins. "They really are." "You gave them that." "A human who makes soup gave my children something an empire couldn't." Ben shrugged. "I just made them lunch. Every day. That's all I ever did." But they both knew it was more than that. It was showing up. It was consistency. It was caring without needing a reason beyond simple human decency. And sometimes, that was everything. The galaxy learned a lesson from Ben Walker's soup kitchen. They learned that the most powerful force in the universe isn't military might or political influence or technological advancement. Sometimes, the most powerful thing in the universe is just a person who sees someone in need and decides to help. No questions asked. No reward expected. Just kindness, offered freely, because everyone deserves to be cared for. That was humanity's real strength. And it changed everything.